Hey there, in the position that we have in front, it is black to play, and after the move knight to c5, white has a very strong reply. So try to find a strong move for white in this position. So now let's go back to the position before knight to c5 and let me give you some context about this position and this game. This is a position from a gameplay between two very legendary players. Playing as black we have Garry Kasparov, who is a former world champion, many consider him the best ever. And playing as white, we have Judith Polgar. At her peak, she was the highest rated woman chess player of all time. And this game was played in Linares, Spain, which is a small city on which every year the strongest players in the world would play this tournament that was considered the strongest tournament of the year. This Linares tournament unfortunately is not held anymore. But let's now go back to the game because the move knight to c5 was not played, but here instead black played the move knight to f8 instead of knight to c5. And the reason why I focus on this position is because there was a controversy at this time on which after the game finished, which Kasparov won, there were rumors that Kasparov had touched the knight, which according to the touch move rule, you have to move it if it is a legal move, as it is in this case, and apparently Kasparov then released the piece and then touched it back and moved the knight to f8. Since neither the arbiter nor Judith Polgar claimed that the knight was released, the game continued on after knight to f8. And by the way, I have some footage from that game, apparently on this same position, so let's now check it. So let me know in the comments what you think, if the move knight to c5 should have been forced on Garry Kasparov or if it was okay to play knight to f8. In any case, let's now evaluate what would happen after knight to c5. This move is actually a bad move for black because here white has a very simple fork by going bishop to c6. Just want to mention that the move rook takes c5 here might look tempting, but it is actually quite a bad move because after rook takes and queen takes, black has this very nice move, rook takes d2, capturing the knight, and the point is that after rook takes, white has problems with the first rank, queen to a1 will force a checkmate, after rook to d1, queen takes, and queen to e1, queen takes, black is giving a checkmate. So the reason why knight to c5 is a bad move is that white has this very strong move, bishop to c6, forking the queen and the rook, and we see that with the knight on c5, the rook on c2 cannot be controlling the c6 square. So this is why this move knight to c5 might look tempting at first sight, and this move bishop to c6 is very easy to miss because the rook on c2 was controlling the c6 square a move before. And this position here looks desperate for black because if the queen moves to any square, for example queen to b4, white simply wins the exchange, and additionally, white still gets the initiative after queen to d8, this knight is pinned, and rook takes c5 is coming, so here black is even losing more material, so this is just really bad for black. So after knight to c5 and bishop to c6, if this had happened in the game, it might even look like Judith Polgar would beat the legendary player Garry Kasparov. By the way, Judith Polgar was only 17 years old at this time. She was already a super strong player. But amazingly here, black still has a resource to keep the game going. Even though black is losing a lot of material, black has his move queen to h4, which I think that Kasparov would have found because it's pretty much the only resource in this seemingly desperate position. And the idea is that after white captures the rook, black starts to get counterattack against the king by going knight to g4. And here there's the idea to give a checkmate, and it seems that black is holding the position, for example after knight to f3, preventing the checkmate and attacking the queen. Black gets a perpetual check by going knight to f2, and after king to g1, black gets the very nice move knight to h3, giving a check, and white is not in time to capture the knight because after pawn takes, queen to f2, and queen to g2 is a checkmate. But after king to h1, we get a perpetual after knight to f2. So even after making this move knight to c5, amazingly, black still had resources to save the game. But this would have been a very interesting continuation to the game. But in the game after knight to f8, black managed to win the game. Here I continue with knight to e4, and just to show how this idea of going knight to f8 didn't make a lot of sense, here Kasparov went back with the knight from f8 to d7. So this probably already shows how knight to f8 was made because of the touch move rule, because knight to c5 was even worse. And here in this position, white traded on f6, which was actually not a very good move. It was probably interesting to go h3, preventing knight to g4, which as we'll see is a very strong idea for black. And here after knight takes and knight takes, even though white got the pawn back, now after knight to g4, black is having a lot of threats. Knight to f2 is an idea, even queen to f4, creating threats against the king is very strong, so this position is already quite bad for white. The game continued rook to f1, seemingly preventing knight to f2, and here Kasparov played the move e4, but I just want to mention that knight to f2 was actually very strong in this position, just forking the king and the rook, and after rook takes and rook takes, white is not in time to capture the rook because the rook on d1 is hanging, and black is already having a decisive material advantage. But in any case, e4 is still quite strong because this pass pawn is going to be very strong, and after bishop to d5, here Kasparov played the move e3, and after bishop to b3, white is winning the exchange, but after queen to e4, bishop takes and queen takes, black's pieces are coordinating very well, and black is even the one having the better position. e2 here is already a huge threat, forking the two rooks. That's why here white tried rook to d8, and after rook takes, queen takes, and king to h7, here white's main problem is the king that is going to be under attack, whereas black's king on h7 is actually very safe. And after queen to e7, trying to control this pass pawn, Kasparov played a very strong move, queen to c4, eyeing the rook on f1, and also planning to go queen to f4, and in this position Polgar resigned. So let's try to understand why. Amazingly, the material balance is even on white's favor, but black simply has too many threats to handle. So first of all, the rook is under attack, so if the rook moves, it has to stay on the first rank, otherwise black will give a checkmate. So here a move like rook to e1 or rook to a1 would be met with queen to f4, with the idea to capture on h2, given a checkmate, and amazingly there's no convincing way to defend against that. For example, after king to g1, black has many ways to go, but even the simple queen takes, king to f1, and queen to h1 will pick up the rook after the king moves. Or another way to try to defend was to go king to g1, defend the rook, but here again black combines the ideas of an attack against the king and pushing the pass pawn, so after e2, this pawn is just very strong. And after rook to e1, here black has this very instructive checkmate. After queen to d4, king to h1 is the only move, and here black gets a forcing way to give a checkmate. This is a very well-known checkmate called the smothered checkmate, and the game would have continued knight to f2, and after king to g1, knight to h3 gives a double check, and after king to h1, black forces this very nice checkmate after queen to g1, sacrificing the queen, and after rook takes, knight to f2, we get this very nice smothered checkmate. So this was a very controversial game, but besides that, it is still very nice to see how Kasparov won quite convincingly after that, and to see how the queen and the knight combine very well when attacking the king. I hope that you liked the video. If you did, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This will help me a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.